This video is a film study look at Ennis Rakestraw Jr., one of the Lions' young players that I was really looking forward to seeing compete the most in the preseason. I still am, even though Thursday night clearly has to be called a missed opportunity for him. I do think that at the end of this video, and you have to stick around for the whole thing, but I'll give you a little bit of an explanation. I think he kind of adjusted some of his press man technique depending on the player, the caliber of the receiver he was facing. Keandre Lambert-Smith has had a great training camp, apparently, for the LA Chargers. There's been more talk about his performance than there has been about Trey Harris. Now, I understand that they're still talking about possibly reuniting with Keenan Allen, but everyone that's associated with the Chargers, fans, coaches alike, content creators as well, has talked about Keandre Lambert-Smith. So for him to beat Rakestraw on one route, possibly two, where a hands to the face penalty was called on Rakestraw, isn't really that much of a slight, I would say, but still find his performance disappointing. I don't mean to be disrespectful with the pictures that I used here to for the lead into the video. It's just all I could find. There's nothing else out there. I do think Rakestraw can play better. I think he's playing smart on at least one of the routes that he gets beat on, number one. And I do think there's evidence that he made an adjustment later on in the game, specifically when facing Keandre Lambert-Smith. Anyway, let's get to the film that I think is going to highlight Rakestraw in this one. And to be intellectually honest, we hope we get a better performance from him in the next preseason game because I do believe that he can play better. First look at some plays here for Rakestraw is actually not going to be in pass coverage. 21 personnel or 12 personnel, depending on how you classify number 44 for the Chargers, who's actually a guy that plays a lot of fullback for them and actually plays some interior D tackle. So Rakestraw really shouldn't be here. There's a gap responsibility, in my opinion, in terms of the inside linebackers here and here. So Rakestraw becomes like a +1 defender. If you ask me, he does stack over the Sam linebacker, Nowaski, who's into the boundary. And certainly Rakestraw disrupts the run flow by filling into that B gap on the guard pulling away. What I'm talking about is this guard's pulling away. And so what that does is it draws Zach Cunningham over the top because he's reading or keying or seeing the guard and reacting to it. So Rakestraw ends up really taking over his gap. Missed tackle probably is my guess, but it's an opportunity for him to fit against the run. You would like for him to finish the play, certainly to finish the tackle, but he does disrupt the flow or disrupt the running back cutting it back. It is Omarion Hampton who's a load to tackle. Rock Yassin, would probably disagree with you there, but it's possibly a missed opportunity for Rakestraw to really make a statement early in the game. This is a touchdown pass by Trey Lance on 4th down. It is 13 personnel or 22 personnel, however you want to refer to number 44, so and number 42 for that matter. But in any case, it's a 4th down, what I call a cheat play. Some people call it, running back fast to the flats. In any case, Trey Lance, the quarterback, is reverse pivoting, and then Omarion Hampton running out into the flats, and that's who Rakestraw is going to cover. Really, the only way to play this, the edge defender is going to be outflanked when you have what basically amounts to a 5-man surface, the guard and tackle being 1 and 2. 3, the tight end / H-back, fullback, whatever you want to call him. 4, the other guy that's a tight end / H-back, fullback. And then here, Will Dissly, an actual tight end. They've created a 5-man surface. This edge defender is going to be out-leveraged. He's going to be outflanked. They're not going to widen him up this far outside of Will Dissly. It's just not how NFL teams play it. Some teams at lower levels would do that and try to create a 5-man surface. In any case, Rakestraw covers the running back fast to the flats, and 24 Strickland, I feel like, is a little bit poor or late with his reaction. Maybe he's caught staring into the backfield, and so Dissly gets over top of him. There is, it is difficult, to be honest with you, to match up with this formation. Which one of these 3 guys, or more than one, is going to release? You don't know, right? The offense has the advantage there. For unpredictability. Strickland, 24, I would assume is responsible for the outside guy. The second tight end with the yellow down block on the defensive end, Muhammad. I would guess that the inside linebacker is responsible for here. I'm not exactly sure how the Lions are playing this. Maybe they didn't anticipate all 3 guys releasing out into the flats. It's a difficult formation to deal with, to be honest with you. Not excusing Strickland, for giving up this play. I think he's reacting to the backfield action. I think basically his eyes have been caught back here. instead of some type of key on one or both of the tight ends. Usually, the way we would teach it is if you've got a defensive end lined up inside shade of a tight end, in this case it's Muhammad lined up inside of the second tight end, we would be keying this here for some type of a run pass read and then matching the routes. If we need our safety to be that quick in reacting to the run, then we're probably not lined up properly. And in my opinion, I think the Lions have probably got to re-examine how they're lining up against that particular formation. It's a tough cover, don't get me wrong, when you have potentially 4 to a side. And what I mean by 4 to a side is these 3 could release, and then the running back actually does go fast to the flats. The Chargers don't release all 4 players into the flats, but potentially or theoretically they could. And lining up to that threat in a way that is sound and also can help you with run to the weak side is a difficult proposition. Let's get into a little bit more coverage stuff with Rakestraw between the 30s. I do wonder if he's going to play better inside the red zone, in some compressed space, and maybe have more difficulty out in space between the 30s, if you will. I think this is a cover 2, and it's basically a flood or a high-low concept. I don't really agree with the way a lot of targets are assigned to certain players. In my opinion, both of these linebackers, one of which is Nowaski, the OLB, right here, and then I think it's Grant Stewart here, they have reacted to the run fake. And so what I mean is, you can see Stewart filling downhill right now, and then Nowaski doesn't appear to be keying the tight end at all because this tight end is releasing, and he's the guy that is actually one of the a possibility for Trey Lance to throw the football to initially because he is open as well. Trey Lance actually gets the ball to the running back out in the flats. Those are the 2 linebackers, Nowaski and Stewart, that I think should have their feet more in like this range here. I think you've really got like a Tampa 2 type scheme, if you will, by this inside linebacker being a little bit more depth than the 2 corners, Rakestraw and whoever the corner is to the opposite side of the field. But in any case, if you apply it to Rakestraw, I think you're incorrect. And so, yes, is it delivered out into the flats? That's not an area that Rakestraw should be covering. So to kind of prove that, let's look at the corner on the other side. So the depth that Rakestraw is at. First of all, I think he recognizes that this tight end is coming open, and Nowaski is not in his drop. Nowaski has taken too long to recognize pass, so I don't fault Rakestraw for kind of reacting to that, even though he's responsible for the flats. But look at the depth of this corner compared to Rakestraw. They're both beyond the 40-yard line. In fact, the other corner is slightly deeper from his post-snap movement than Rakestraw is. So you don't have a situation where someone is actually assigned to this area to physically be in that spot. We would call it an NCZ, no cover zone, meaning we're not going to cover that area. We're going to respond to it and come downhill to make the tackle after the pass has been completed if it's not dropped. The point is, sometimes there's no one to assign a target to because the coaches are actually calling it a no cover zone. Let's just talk about Nowaski for a second here and how I think it relates to Rakestraw, and how really, I don't assign much, if any, blame to Rakestraw at all. Hey, the tight end is releasing in a pass. He's not down blocking on this defensive end, nor is he the tight end stepping to us to deal with us in any fashion. He's not juking and then releasing inside in any manner. He's just taking a vertical release, a kind of slow one, if you will. O'Connor tries to actually kind of runs into that tight end. Nowaski is a difficult proposition. Look, when you're talking about lining up on the line of scrimmage and then being responsible for the hook area, 8 to 10 to maybe even 12 yards deep in a zone coverage, it's almost unrealistic at times to ask guys to do that. Am I saying that Nowaski shouldn't be faulted? No, I think he could do a better job of it. My point in bringing all of that up is having a second-level defender like Zach Cunningham be able to get into his pass drop is totally different than an edge defender who has a tight end to his side. It's just how difficult it is to be able to react to those things. Nonetheless, I think Nowaski could do a better job here, and I think there's a little bit of a trickle-down effect in how that could impact or actually help Rakestraw possibly react to the route in the flat sooner. The ball's still going to be caught, but Rakestraw could be there a little sooner if the tight end threat wasn't open, which is where I think Nowaski should have been in the first place. Hopefully I said all that in a way that makes sense from the standpoint of referring to it as a trickle-down effect. So then let's get into the big completion to Keandre Lambert-Smith against Rakestraw on a critical third down. So it's a 3rd and 4. Rakestraw lined up and pretty much played left corner the entirety of the time that he was out on the field Thursday night. It's a 6-man rush, and he's playing man, press man, in fact. I think that you'll see a play later on that kind of illustrates he's a little better when he gives some ground, in my opinion, maybe a little bit more able to react to either side. And certainly he's beat, down the right sideline, quite poorly. It ends up being a pretty big gain for Keandre Lambert-Smith. Now, it's a 6-man rush, and so I do want to bring this up, and I'm not trying to alleviate Rakestraw of any responsibility, but watch first a little bit of a back step by Keandre Lambert-Smith, and then he's going to make a little move to the inside here, which Rakestraw kind of overreacts to, and then Lambert-Smith brings his route to the sideline, the bottom side of our screen. Watch Rakestraw kind of overreact. Why? Well, it's a 6-man rush. I would offer to you that Rakestraw, is thinking, okay, there's no way that this guy, the quarterback, is going to have enough time for Keandre Lambert-Smith to backstep, bucket step almost, move to the inside, and then bring his route back towards the sideline. My overall point here, I think it's possible that Rakestraw is being coached against this 6-man rush to react to the initial move because the quarterback won't get much time. Trey Lance got rid of the ball quickly. There's really no pressure on him at all. I do think Detroit adjusted the way they ran their 6-man rush, and if you stick around in the video long enough, you'll see my explanation for it. So here's the 2 edge defenders occupying essentially the tackles. We're just talking about math here, if you ask me, basically. And then the nose tackle is occupying the center, with O'Connor occupying the left guard. So what I believe they're trying to get accomplished is Cunningham through that A-gap, and then Stewart looping around, going through that same A-gap. Basically, the Lions, believe that the running back is not going to be able to deal with both inside linebackers. It's just simple math. Stewart's a little bit late getting there. He's trying probably not to give it away, is my guess. So he ends up kind of looping around. Am I saying that they would be able to get to Lance, if they ran the stunt better? No, not at all. I'm just giving you an explanation as to why the 6-man rush didn't work, even though there is an occupied center, occupied left guard, and then only one running back looping around for Zach Cunningham and Stewart, who, in my opinion, is a little bit late on his loop. They changed up the way they did it a little bit later in the game. Also, Rakestraw on that rep that I'm referencing changed the way that he kind of reacted to Keandre Lambert-Smith, and that he gave a little bit more ground and wasn't as handsy, wasn't as relying on his hands to make contact with the receiver. I will say this, I think Thursday night's matchup against the Chargers is a great barometer for Rakestraw against Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Harris. And man, I don't fault him on that zone play. I think it's pretty clear based on my explanation that I think Nowaski should have been in an area a little bit deeper. But again, the way that it's drawn up as a 9 technique, same linebacker / defensive end, it's difficult to get into your pass drop. You're not going to get as much depth as Zach Cunningham or another inside linebacker because you lined up on the line of scrimmage initially. So Rakestraw had to cover up for that area. He clearly got beat on the 3rd down completion to Lambert-Smith. Anyone can see that. I do have a rant a little bit about the zone in terms of applying completions or targets to a player on every snap, right? Who was targeted on that one? We covered it, pretty much in detail. So at this point, you should be able to remember it a couple of minutes ago. Rakestraw and the other corner are at the same depth, like I pointed out. We get these stats oftentimes, right, that kind of blindly assign completions and targets to a certain player. But there's games where I'll see a guy targeted as 5 or 6 times. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't remember that. And I'll be honest with you, at this point, I don't trust those stats. Absent seeing the film and the way that a score was impacted positively or negatively, I want to see the film. I'm talking about PFF and I'm talking about other rating services. And really, I think unless or until we see the play-by-play scoring for PFF and also the plays referencing when a guy was targeted, because you'll see this shit on Mondays after a Sunday afternoon game or Sunday night game. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. gave up 5 completions on 7 targets. And then I don't know about you, there's times where I'm like, I don't remember him being targeted. Unless or until we get those two pieces of information, I think you're a sellout for blindly trusting some of that stuff without some link to the film or at least when the play occurred. Another 3rd and 5 here, and Rakestraw is going to be in man against Harris, or the Chargers' second round pick. Into the boundary, the left-hand side of the Lions defense. There's definitely a coverage mix-up here. The running back releasing into the flat. Strickland, the safety, and the inside linebacker, Stewart. Once again, one of those guys really messed things up. Stewart actually ends up peeling off to the tight end. You can see that the running back is wide open out into the flats. This is a play, if you recall, where Hassanin probably misses an opportunity to sack O'Connor as well, and then Zach Cunningham is the guy to force Lance out of bounds as he worked his way to the right sideline. This might be a Banjo read for the linebacker, Stewart, and the safety. I don't actually think that it is. I'm just open to the possibility that it could be. Banjo basically would be if the running back releases to this side, then maybe Zach Cunningham will take him, and you'll have a man reaction on this tight end by the safety because the running back, he's absolved of any responsibility with the running back, and then this linebacker would defend the low hole area in a man-free coverage, basically 6 to 8 to maybe 10 yards deep in between the hashes if the ball's in the middle of the field. But let's exercise another reaction, which is actually what occurs. Maybe you have that running back released to the flats, and in this case, you might get the safety running with that route, and then that would, of course, force Stewart to take over the tight end, leaving the remaining inside linebacker, Zach Cunningham, to take over the low hole that I just had drawn up a moment ago for Grant Stewart. It's just called a Banjo reaction. It's an easy drill to do with kids or players and kind of test or gauge their ability to handle it in live speed. We're talking about Rakestraw Jr., who's in coverage against Trey Harris, doesn't end up being targeted there. He does kind of peel off, he being Rakestraw, and you kind of get an eye on it. Here he is kind of locking up Trey Harris. There's a lot of contact here, to be honest with you. And it's the third play that I've got in this game where, I think he could have been called for a penalty. When you see a hands to the face a little bit later for Rakestraw against Keandre Lambert-Smith, we're a little far away to see it from the play that I'm talking about. We're not here, right? I think there's 3 times that it occurs in the game, and it's something that he's got to clean up and that he's got to deal with and just try to focus on during the game. Now let's go back to the All-22. So we're talking about all the contact that's here. And then as Lance gets out of the pocket, Rakestraw is on Harris. And because there's nobody on the running back, he leaves Harris to go to the running back and basically pass Harris off to hopefully some safety or someone deep. So, he's trying to exercise a judgment call there in the middle of the play, and that someone, a safety behind him, will be there to help. Forgive me if following or going down that rabbit hole of the Banjo read, combo read on the running back. I'm trying to explain to you how it may have been messed up by Strickland and Stewart. I do also wonder if Stewart in the middle of the play realized he made a mistake and just said, okay, I'm going to stay with the tight end because I'm here now, but, I could be wrong. Another 3rd and 8, and this time Rakestraw is man on number 1. Number 1 being the outside receiver, number 2 being the next receiver in from the sideline, in this case right to left for the offense, bottom to top for us on the screen, and then 3 being the receiver who's closest to the tackle. If you do it from the other side, if you're unfamiliar, number 1 would be the receiver to the top side, and then the running back is 2. That's the way that it's numbered. Generally, you number from outside in, not inside out. In any case, Rakestraw's man on 1, the outside receiver. He's not targeted here. Trey Lance getting the ball out to, I think it's Davis, who's actually a pretty productive player even in regular season situations. It's a 3rd and, I think it's 8, 3rd and maybe 9 completion. Rakestraw seems to be in a good relationship, getting a little bit of a touch on the receiver with his outside hand and then turning and doing so with his inside hand. I think his feet are a little bit slow here, to be honest with you. I'm talking about the man turn into the sideline. I wonder if Rakestraw was a little bit over-committal. That's probably not even a word. I wonder if he overcommits to the first move consistently. We don't really have enough film of him. There was one preseason game against against the Giants last year, so I'm not willing to make that conclusion. These are just things that I'm wondering as I go through the film Friday, and then it's a Saturday night as I record this. This is the hands to the face penalty. I don't think it's the right hand that gets him the penalty. I think it's the left hand afterwards, but it could be wrong. My apologies. I actually said it wrong there. You got the left hand stab. You can kind of see it up here at the top of the screen. Left hand stab first. I think it is the right hand that maybe gets the hands to the face, because you could see from our angle, even though we're really far away, that Keandre Lambert-Smith's helmet kind of buckles here. I'm a defensive guy, and so there's a part of me that always wants to err on the side of the coverage guy. But when it's the Lions offense who's getting jammed up like that, or the Ravens offense that's getting jammed up like that, I do, in a hypocritical fashion, get pissed off about it. I credit for Rakestraw Jr. for coming out and being a little physical with Keandre Lambert-Smith. I would love to see them match up again next week, or maybe even 2 weeks from now. Now that we've got some film of Rakestraw and the coaches have some film of him, and hopefully can help him maybe make some of these corrections. Clearly, from the end zone angle, it's an empty formation, by the way. It's a quick decision by Trey Lance to get rid of this football. You do have a linebacker 41 blitzing, and I think they're essentially trying to occupy the center again with this tackle, and then allowing the linebacker to either read it or go through a predetermined A gap on the back side of that center, stepping to the D tackle. Doesn't get a sack, and like I said, Rakestraw obviously gets a penalty that you see on the field. I still really like the opportunities for him. Meaning, get out there, get physical. I do think, or wonder, if he overreacts a little bit when he's in that press man alignment. I almost wonder if he'd be better suited for either off coverages where you're reading the pattern and then matching it. I'm not saying that definitively, but these are things that I wonder as I've gone through the film. And then the adjustment that I'll show you here in a moment, him being a little more non-committal and kind of getting a little bit of depth. I'm not really saying getting into a back pedal, but being in a little bit of a slow step, slow pedal to react to the receiver no matter which way he goes. I almost wonder if he'd be better in those situations, but I'm glad that he got the opportunity to be a little bit more physical, at least in this first preseason game. Rakestraw's really not involved here in this concept, to be honest with you. He's spot shadowed up at the top. Like I said, left-hand side of the defense. This is a Greg Roman special. Greg Roman's the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. He was the offensive coordinator in Baltimore for Lamar Jackson's historic 2019 campaign. They let him go after 2022. It's either 12 personnel or 21 personnel, whatever you want to call it, but it's a 12 personnel formation, a variation of 4 verticals. The tight end into the boundary is the guy who ends up catching the football. A couple of things to say about this. It's a little bit silly to see the Mike linebacker in what looks like the Tampa 2 kind of overlapping this inside linebacker. I'm saying it's a little bit silly for a lot of people, but I'll give you an explanation as to why I think they stayed in that look no matter what, even though, a lot of times when you've got 2 distended or separated right there, basically 2 wide, you got a normal split here and a normal split here. Oftentimes people will check out of the Tampa 2 and they'll just read 2-1 with the corner, such that he doesn't just release one vertical and give this safety a vertical to deal with here, and then possibly, this vertical here could have been big if Trey Lance is looking down here to this bottom side. The corner down here, I think it's Boodle is just, releasing him. So it's kind of silly to see you stay in this. There's variations and checks that you can do, but also you want to show the Tampa 2 against a lot of different looks, or the cover 3. So you don't want to put on film that you're going to check out of things immediately. Of course, they don't know what the original call was. You'll get a really good look as to what I'm saying. It's a Tampa 2 flavor. I wouldn't necessarily call it a Tampa 2 with the corners alignment, especially when you've got 2 tight ends to one side. It's a little difficult to call it a Tampa 2. Down here, you're not really jamming anybody. B, you do have outside leverage, and Rakestraw is certainly carrying that route. There's a lot to say about zone defenders in the NFL having so many coverage, second-level defenders, having so many coverages that they play that they, really don't play any of them well. And we do get an idea here of Nowaski, where he should be at. I think this is very similar to the coverage that they should have been in on the initial completion to the running back that I spent so much time talking about, and almost alleviating Rakestraw of any responsibility. Look at the depth you've got here. A little bit less depth there, but both of them are just staring at the quarterback. Throws it over the top, the vacated area by the Mike linebacker, who's looking to carry a vertical to the passing strength. So let me pull this back and just talk about that for a moment. Passing strength, the 2 wide receiver side, non-passing strength where you have two tight ends. It makes sense, right? So the Mike linebacker in a Tampa 2, the various versions of it, he's going to get vertical, but you do have a stop sign, man. There's got to be a stop sign, regardless of where you teach it. Funnel, tunnel, whatever you want to call it. And I think he's just getting, way too much overlap here with that linebacker. And as it stands, it ends up creating, an easy shot in the seam, since 47 isn't reading the pattern at all. And you do get this a lot in the NFL. So I recognize people are going to say, Coach, you're saying the NFL inside linebackers should be able to get their head open and turn and look and see what the route's happening there. You're damn right. You should be able to get your head turned and look and see what's happening. If you've got someone crossing your face, maybe getting high-low to levels concept, or if you've got vertical releases by both guys, then hell, I don't have to deal with the outside guy. The corner's going to handle that. I can get to the inside shoulder of 2, this guy here. A little bit more depth, in my opinion, is needed there by Turner, who otherwise played, I think, a pretty good game. Forgive me if I've gone too much into some of these coverages and my thoughts in them. This will be the last play that we go over. I recognize that we've gone, way overboard for a video on Rakestraw, who pretty much played most of the first half. There's a slight adjustment here up at the top. I think you've got the same 6-man blitz call as the third down, the long completion he gave up to Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Lance, but just a different way to get this accomplished for Rakestraw. Now, it is also a different release by KLS, right? So he's not taking the same bucket release, breaking to the inside, faking to the inside, and then bringing the route back. I recognize that we're up at the top of the screen, so you might be losing some of those marks. My apologies for that. So it's a different release, but he's a little less aggressive with his hands and more reliant on short, quick steps with his feet, allowing him to possibly turn to either side. Basically, he's not overcommitting here. He didn't get a fake from Keandre Lambert-Smith. I kind of wish we did get one there so that we could see if there was an actual real adjustment or if this is just due to KLS's route being different. I do think that the Lions definitely adjusted the way they got the blitz accomplished. So let's talk about how they're getting it accomplished. First, the 2 defensive ends. I think you got the same 6-man rush, just a slightly different way to isolate, get a 2-on-1 against the running back. Basically, I think they did this in a better manner than the one that I showed you earlier when Stewart was very late crossing over the midline to get into that same A gap as Zach Cunningham. 2 different inside linebackers here. 41, whose name I forget. He also had 7 tackles. And then 47, Stewart, who had 7 tackles during the game. These are the 2 inside linebackers I'm talking about. So they're occupying the guard with the defensive tackle. Right here. They're occupying the guard. These 2 defensive ends, Lynn and 50, whose name I forget for a moment, are rushing and occupying the tackles. So we're just talking about forcing this guy, the center, to have no work at all. And then bringing Turner, 47, and 41 into the same gap where the running back can't handle him. You can see Turner is doing the same thing Stewart, just maybe, slightly quicker with a little bit more burst and sense of urgency, less of a fake. It doesn't impact Lance's throw at all. You can't blame Lance, right, for targeting Trey Harris against Boodle, who seem to really have trouble matching up. We're here to focus on Rakestraw. It's possible that he didn't actually adjust much during the game. I suspect that he did just because of the feet. Shorter, quicker, able to turn to his outside, man turn, or turn to the inside to match Keandre Lambert-Smith. Like I said, I would like to see those guys match up again in the ensuing weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks from now. I suspect that Rakestraw would play things a little bit better. Even if you accept my assertion that Rakestraw made a slight adjustment, or someone did, one of the coaches on the sideline possibly made a slight adjustment to be less handsy, more of a quicker, shorter step, slight backpedal, because, he had to respect the talent of Keandre Lambert-Smith, the guy who had beat him twice, right? He beat him, on the outside third down, the big completion up the right side, I think like 28 yards, maybe it was 31. And then the little shake slant where Rakestraw got called for a hands to the face. So call it a survey step, whatever. Maybe you can't use that all the time. And I've been in those arguments. Well, I should say I've witnessed those arguments. What I'm getting at is you can't utilize that less handsy technique, quicker steps all the time. I've been in those meeting rooms where one coach is saying, hey, we've got to threaten with the jam to a degree at times, and we got to threaten early in the game. So that's a possibility for Rakestraw. Threaten, provide the jam early right now. for a talented athlete. Like I said, two good receivers in this game, Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Harris. And then, but I do think it's possible he needs to use it more strategically right now at the NFL level. At least last Thursday, he didn't seem to be able to carry out that jam and then confidently deal with the next step, the next move, because he would overreact to it. So to me, there seems to be a little bit of doubt in his mind that he'll be able to deal with the sudden burst, short area quickness, and or long speed by a receiver like KLS or Trey Harris. So the adjustment later on, I think, is appropriate and kind of illustrates that we might see a better version of Rakestraw in the next game. You're more than welcome to let me know if you think I'm being too glowing for a game where he quite obviously played poor. I don't know what the grade was from PFF. You guys at this point should already know what I think of PFF, but I do recognize that it pretty much aligns with the grades that I would have in my mind generally, because those guys, they do watch the film. They just don't provide you to my knowledge, a play-by-play scoring for a particular play. Did we score at a 1? Did we score at a -1, a 0, whatever? I do think that KLS and Trey Harris are talented guys to deal with. And so from that standpoint, this gives us a little bit of a idea of what Rakestraw right now, or Thursday night, would look like if he was matched up against starting caliber receivers. I think he would struggle, right? Will he improve from a technique standpoint, an awareness standpoint over the course of the next 2, 3, or 4 weeks? Absolutely. That's why these games are played, right? People can call them a waste of time. People can call them meaningless. They're not meaningless to the guys like Rakestraw, Nowaski, Turner, and others who are trying to solidify a spot on the roster. I think that's quite obvious that besides just Terrion Arnold and DJ Reed, probably Rock Ya-Sin, Rakestraw is battling probably with a guy like Dorsey, who I haven't heard really much about. I think he's still on the roster. At least I saw he was 4 or 5 days ago, and someone talked about him in the Discord. Certainly didn't see him on the field the other night, nor did I see him on the sideline. In any case, I think Rakestraw is got to improve a little bit here in the next week or two and put some better film out for himself to get an opportunity to be relied upon if an injury happened like occurred last year for the defensive back group. I excluded Amik Robertson from the discussion there because he's generally going to be a nickel corner, but we all know if the Lions needed an outside corner for whatever reason, they would move him out first as opposed to relying on a guy like Rakestraw, at least basing that evaluation, that point I just made, basing that off of the film that we saw from Thursday night. I think he can improve, and I hope it happens soon because he's a guy that I saw his college film of, and I was excited for the Lions to be able to get him in the same draft that they got Terrion Arnold. You're welcome to let me know what you think of the plays that I used to illustrate Rakestraw's performance, which was quite poor, or at least below average on Thursday night. If you think I was too soft on him for some of the things that I saw, I was just trying to provide some balance and or possible other explanations outside of my own knowledge, of course, because I'm not affiliated with the Lions organization. And then finally, if you think other Detroit Lions fans would enjoy this film study breakdown, which at this point is the third one that I've put out this weekend, but nonetheless, one that I think you guys wanted to see, if you think other Lions fans would enjoy it, please consider grabbing a link to this video and sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.